Here's a common problem that I see in conservative and libertarian communities, and it's a problem that I used to be a part of. But I'm going to invite you to reconsider something, right? You oftentimes see people that are, let's say, conservatives or libertarians, they advocate for small or limited government. Now, that's fine and dandy, the United States, and I'm speaking for America in particular, fuck all the other countries. This isn't about you, this is about America, this bitch. If you've got two political oppositions, let's say, and both of them can agree upon a set of rules or foundational principles, then they can compete in a way that is civilized and fair, right? So, like, let's say, in principle, let's say that both the left and the right could agree that a limited and small government was a good thing, right? What that would do is it would create a set of boundaries for the left and for the right. So the left and the right could both identify where either side goes too far to the left or to the right. The problem is that the only political parties or the only political aisle, the only political wing that advocates for small and limited government is the right wing. Right? Right wingers are the only people that advocate for small government or limited government. And the reason that's a problem is whenever you've got two political parties in competition with one another, and one of them advocates for small limited government and the other one doesn't, all that's going to happen is that the one that doesn't advocate for small or limited government is simply going to take the levers of power and do with them whatever they will. And that's ultimately just going to inevitably result in the expansion of governmental powers in the image of the party that is perfectly willing to expand government indefinitely. And that's what we're seeing, or that's what we've seen in the United States for so many decades now. And that's why we have DOGE now that's cutting all this bullshit out. But here's a fucking problem. Here's a fucking problem. DOGE is going to go away in like 2 years, July of next year, I believe. DOGE is gone. It's like, great. You cut out all the fat, right? But there's a saying I want you to think about, right? They say, if you do not fill your garden with flowers, it'll fill with weeds by default. It's like, okay, great. Let's go ahead and cut out all the bullshit in our government for the next year or two. What are you going to replace it with? Nothing? Well, what's going to happen is it's just going to be filled with more leftist seeds in the future. So we have one of two options. Well, we only really have fucking one option. We've tried to exercise one of the options. Option one would be to have a rational dialogue with the left and say, look, we need to establish some reasonable boundaries that we can both follow, not just the right, to determine when the government is too big or too powerful, right? When does the left and when does the right go too far? You can define all day long when the right goes too far. In fact, if the right does anything, they're considered Nazis and tyrants. But the left can castrate children, and no one gives a shit about that. And so there's a problem, and that rational dialogue there has been attempts to make that rational dialogue take place over the last 10, 15 years, and it simply hasn't gone anywhere. So that leaves only one other option. If the left does not want to play by the same set of rules, agree to the same set of foundational principles, the only option is for the right wingers to start playing hardball, start advocating for a bigger government, but with policies that favor right wing idealism. And this is another problem, by the way. I'm going to go into more detail about this in another video. But another thing that the right lacks, that the left has, is they don't have an ideal. They don't have a vision that they're striving towards, right? Because you might ask, okay, great, let's go ahead and start imposing harsh policies to get what we want. The question then is, what do we want, right? The conservatives they want to advocate for cutting back and limited government, but it's like, well, what do you actually want, right? What kind of society do you want? What kind of culture do you want? We haven't answered that question. We really haven't done a great job of articulating that, building a narrative. Then once we've done that, we can then begin having a discussion about the specific policies that we will have to impose to get that. More on that later. Subscribe if you want to see content like this and for me to go into this further. Take care.